Abigail's best-selling novel, I'm holding the book, The Art of Drowning, released by Cable Creek Publishing, is a contemporary young adult story about the redemptive power of recovery through empathy. That's really beautiful. So, ladies and gentlemen, why don't we go ahead and say hi to our guest for tonight, Miss Abigail Wild. I turn over the time to you, Abigail.
Oh, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and listening to me speak. Of course, it's bright and early in the morning. For those of you that are on the East Coast of America with me, I guess we're sharing our coffee together. So that's nice. I like to enjoy coffee with people. So we're going to skip ahead. I really do feel as if writing is a great way to heal traumas. But what you're going to find out is that it not only helps you psychologically to heal, but can also help you physiologically with your actual health, physical health and everything, just because of the act of kind of contextualizing what is stressing you out, what is hurting you psychologically. And I think that journaling is extremely powerful. I think that just writing daily, anything, streaming your thoughts is incredibly important and transformative. So how this all came about for me is that, of course, I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. I am not a psychologist. I'm just a writer. So anything that I tell you here, check out for yourself. And, if you are seeing a therapist or something like that, definitely talk to them about journaling before you begin, because sometimes traumas can be really tough to deal with. And so you want to make sure you're doing so safely, because writing really can open things up for you. So you need to make sure that you're under the correct care. But for me, what happened was writing my pain, writing the things that I was worried about, helped me to heal and to transform who I am. So when I was working on The Art of Drowning, my book, my first novel, the basis of it was that my son had a head injury from a skateboarding accident. And it took him, it was considered a concussion, but it took him 2 years. He was in bed for 2 years with the concussion. And then after that, it's been 8 years. He's still healing certain parts. Like right now, he's still working on his eyes, visually healing. So there's a lot that's going on. But for those 2 years that he was in bed, when he got back and when he went back to classes for high school, some people were not kind to him because they did not believe that a concussion could last that long, whereas it's called post-concussion syndrome, and it can last that long. So what I realized when I was sitting in doctor's offices for physical therapy with him is that there are so many other teens out there going through the same thing, and they are all coming up against the same problem, that nobody believed them that their concussion lasted for years. And people, when they don't believe you, they're not exactly the kindest to you. So I felt like I needed to get something out there. I knew that I could write, right? And it was paining me. I would sit there and talk to parents, and we would just sit and cry. And it's just like, I have to do something. I have to educate people, but I don't want to go around lecturing people and telling people that's not nice. That's not, nobody listens to that, right? So I decided to write a fictional novel. Now, my son asked me to not make it about him, so I didn't. I changed the gender. My main character is a female, and it faces a lot of the same things that a lot of the people who have these types of head injuries are dealing with. So like PTSD, anxiety, and actually eating disorders. And so those are the main themes in the book. But what I found while writing it, because as a mother, I just had moments where I would break down, like, why is this happening, right? Writing the book gave me the strength to continue fighting for my son, if that makes sense. It made me get into a position where I was better able to contextualize what was going on in his life and how I could better aid him. And I could see the full picture of what was happening to him and kind of heal both of us. You know what I mean? And so while this was not born of journaling, I set out to build a novel. From this, I actually learned when I am bothered or stressed or something like that, if I sit down and write about it, I feel a million times better. And I don't know how many of you journal, but I highly suggest taking like 5 to 15 minutes just to sit down and write what is going on in your heart. So, here's a quote by Stephen King that I thought was really good. It starts with this: put your desk in the corner, and every time you sit down there to write, remind yourself why it isn't in the middle of the room. Life isn't a support system for art. It's the other way around. So art mimics life. Art helps us to work through life. So our lives don't evolve because of art. Art evolves because of our lives. And so if he had his desk in the middle, it would make writing the middle of his world, when in reality, his life tells what he should be writing. And so, yes, he writes horror, but the fact of the matter is that if you're going to choose to write a novel off of something that's in your journal, off of something that you're going through, it doesn't have to be contemporary. It can be fantastical. It can be sci-fi. The fact of the matter is that almost every author will tell you that their main character is in some way themselves. So you're injecting a piece of yourself into your main character. And in fact, you're injecting a piece of yourself into your antagonist. You are all over your book. So your experiences in life do inform those decisions you make with writing. And so it is basically very much the desk where you create your art, where you write your words, is off in the corner, because of the rest of the office space is your life. And that is the most important thing to writing. So why? Why should you write as a mode for healing? Like I said earlier, there are physiological and psychological reasons for this. And there's been a number of studies lately that I found were very, very promising. This is the first one. James Pennybaker, University of Texas, conducted an experiment where he had healthy undergraduates, journal for 15 minutes every day. And this went on for like 6 months. The control group just wrote journal prompts. Okay. You know, those books with prompts that like, okay, think about this. What do you think about this? Write about this for 15 minutes. And the other group was writing about things that bothered them, their traumas in life. What he found was the group that was asked to write about their traumas in life were healthier and ended up having fewer visits to the university health center, which means writing that trauma, writing what they had gone through in life, helped their health, kept them healthier. And you think, but like, how could writing be so powerful? Well, if you think about it, it's a way to relieve stress. And there are a lot of people out there that believe that health-related issues come about or are exacerbated because of stress. And so if you can find a way to deal with that stress, you will be better off health-wise. So, and it doesn't just have to be writing. It can be painting, drawing, music, anything that you can pour your creative soul into to deal with whatever it is you're going through. People do yoga, people meditate, prayer. As long as you're pouring your heart into it, it relieves that stress. And so I like this about journaling, of course, because I'm a writer. So I want to write. And so that's what I've been doing. Now, the next study was done by the Journal of the American Medical Association. And they took 107 patients that had asthma and rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, and told them to write for 20 minutes for 3 consecutive days, okay, over a period of time. So 71 of them wrote about the most stressful events of their lives, and the rest wrote about kind of neutral subjects. Maybe they wrote about what they bought at the grocery store, or maybe they listed their plans for what they had at the office for that day. But 4 months into these exercises, the 70 patients who were writing about stressful events improved their health. They stopped disease progression. They started to feel better. They were able to kind of stop especially with rheumatoid arthritis, they were able to stop the progression of that disease, which is huge because it destroys your joints. You know what I mean? So they were having physiological and health benefits to writing every day. And I just think that's a testimony to learning how to deal with stress. And if you can learn how to deal with stress through writing, that's a powerful thing, because not only are you getting the words out there as you write, but you can also take a step back and a month later read through what you've already written to see how much you've grown. And that can be just transformative, because you can see, look where I was and look where I am now. And that's a powerful thing. So researchers believe that journaling helps relieve stress that exacerbates disease, right? So we already talked about that, and I think we all know that. But to tap into writing's healing power, people use it to better understand and learn from their emotions. So what does that mean? When you take when you deal with something stressful within your day, okay, the first reaction is always going to be the biggest reaction until you take a step back and you realize to yourself, okay, I didn't need to fly off the handle. This is manageable. What we're going through is manageable. Okay. This stress, there are things that we can do to fix it, whereas at first it feels like the world is crushing in on you. Right. But if you take those moments when you feel like that and you write it out, it puts that moment of stress in context. Okay. Which means you will better be able to, if you just start writing and just not even thinking about what you're writing, just getting the words out there, you are better able to deal with it because you can see it within context of everything else that's going on. Not only that, as you're writing, you could end up coming up with the clue to help you deal with whatever it is that's stressing you. You can better be able to see things from all sides. You'd better be able to realize, well, hey, let's look at this from this other person's point of view. Maybe the other person has a completely different point of view that I need to look at. And all of that can happen in writing with just 15 minutes a day. So the physiological or the psychological benefits, of course, I mean, we have already talked about stress, but writing is a way to contextualize what is bothering us. So like I said, that moment where you feel like the world is crushing in on you, if you take a moment to write it out, it puts it in its proper place, and you can realize that maybe it isn't that big. Okay. Like, I don't know. I used to go to summer church camp, right? And we always used to write down what was bothering us, like in a prayer format, and then throw it into the bonfire, as a way, like a prayer going up to heaven, the smoke would be rising to heaven type thing. And that always helped me to the act of writing down what was bothering me and then burning it made that pain kind of stop, because it put an end to it. When you put it into the fire, it burned up, it put an end to it. And so I think it's the same sort of thing. Like, I'm not saying go out and burn your journals. Don't do that, because your journals are full of literary gold. But it's the same concept. You write your thoughts and then you close the journal and you put it away. Don't read it immediately. Or you can, if that helps you. But I mean, like, put it away. And then when you put it away, try your hardest to put the pain away as well. It can force you to look at the larger picture and put the trauma in its place, which is what I discussed. Basically, the trauma maybe isn't as big as you think it is in the moment, and it'll give you a chance to take a step back and look at it from a more objective standpoint. And the act of writing words forces you to find meaning in what you are experiencing. So you have all these great big feelings going on inside of you. If you can put those into words, which can sometimes be hard, put those very large feelings into words, it forces you to take a look at it in a way that will show you the meaning of it, show you the why. How can you learn? How can you grow from it? And it can be hard. That's why I say, like, with journal writing, don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about sentence structure. I don't even care if you don't put in any punctuation at all. It's free writing. It's just kind of like a stream of consciousness writing. So journaling. So how do you even start? So the first thing that I would suggest is figure out, do you want to write on paper? Do you want to type it in a Word document, or do you want to keep it for yourself, or do you want to put it up on a blog? If you put it up on a blog, you might want to care about the punctuation a little bit. But, some people really resonate with writing by hand. Some people need that action. There is a brain-hand connection between writing by hand or just typing, because it's easier just to type up everything for the blog. The main thing is to set a goal to write for a certain time each day. So tell yourself, and it doesn't need to be much, tell yourself, okay, every day I am going to write for 15 minutes, or even just to start. Every day I'm going to write for 5 minutes. Okay. And so it's really not that much of a time frame. And if you think back to the university study that I just talked about, those students were just asked to write for 15 minutes every day. And it had huge health benefits for them. They stayed healthier, And so I think it's important that those 15 minutes are incredibly important for you. And I think you fit them in. Make sure to fit them in. So I suggest deciding ahead of time what time of day or where you will write. It's all about setting up a writing habit. And even with people who are writing novels, it is all about setting up a writing habit. How many times have you heard of novelists saying, I write and then I'll put it away and I'll forget about it for a year and then I'll come back to it? Well, don't do that. You'll never get done. And the inspiration then won't flow as much as you need it to. So if you set up a writing habit and you write every single day at the same time, okay, in the same place, your brain gets engaged at that time. So like I said, I write in the middle of the night because that's when my house is quiet. So my brain knows in the middle of the night that I am going to be creative, and it clicks into gear. And it also helps to get rid of writer's block if you set up this habit, because your brain just engages with the action of writing. So figure out where you're going to write. Try and write the same place every day. I know some people like to go to like the coffee cafe or something like that to write, but I think that if you're going to get serious and really, really dig in, I think using the same place every day to write at the same time is beneficial, and it helps your brain to stay engaged. Then also explore what makes you want to write. Why do you want to write this? Why do you want to journal? Okay. That could be your first journal entry. So if you're opening a crisp new journal and you're like, I don't want to write today, you could flip to that first journal entry and remind yourself why you're doing this. Maybe it's because there's a lot of stressful things happening in your life that will remind you of the benefits of journaling, of why you're journaling, of what you hope to get out of it. And that's the thing. Everybody needs to decide for themselves what they want to get out of it. And so when you're like, I don't want to write today, force yourself to read that first journal entry where you say why. It'll renew the spirit. Okay, so here are some steps for writing in a journal, and it's write. W-R-I-T-E. W, what do you want to write about? Name it. Name it out. Say, today my coworker upset me because she lied to my boss about me, like anything like that. Today I'm worried about my mother's health. Today I'm worried about my own health. Today I'm worried about student loans. That's mine. So review and reflect. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath and focus. So don't just open it up and like take a moment, breathe, okay? And then focus and start after that. Then investigate your thoughts and feelings. Just start writing and keep writing. So if you are investigating your thoughts and feelings, what you're really doing is a stream of consciousness. Write whatever comes into your mind, okay? Remember, a journal is just for you, unless you're blogging it. That's a totally different thing. But a journal is just for you. It is just for your benefit. So it doesn't matter what you say. Let your brain explore. Let your brain work through problems. Remember, when you're doing something creative, your brain is still back there in the background working through whatever problems you have in the day. you know? So just let your brain grow. Take the pen in your hand and start writing whatever pops up. Okay. So time yourself again, write for 5 to 15 minutes straight. And that again is setting up the writing habit. That should be your goal every single day. Okay. And I think we can all afford 5 to 15 minutes. And then exit smart. So reread what you've written and reflect on it. And then write a little bit about what you see, what patterns you see. Maybe you solved your problem in your journal entry. Write that down. But then I'm going to tell you, put it away for a little while. Put it away for a few days, maybe even a week, and get them back out and read about what you wrote, then and see, because I guarantee you will have grown. And not only that, the act of writing and contextualizing your pain and what you're going through, when you see it a week later, when you read it a week later, you're going to realize how far you've come. And that makes you feel triumphant. That makes you feel successful. And that's a good thing. And that will go a long way to helping you deal with other stressors when they pop up. So finally, keep the following in mind while you were journaling. Do not worry about length or word count. I know so many people, like when you're writing a novel, when I am writing a novel, I tell myself I have to write 2,000 words today. That is my goal. When you're journaling, don't do that. You write what comes into your mind. The goal with this is not length. The goal with this is not word count. The goal with this is growth. Okay. So focus on taking time to write and giving it your full attention. It has to be those 15 minutes where you are focused on just the writing act. Okay. Nothing else. If you have small kids, have someone take them off your hands just for 15 minutes. Sit in the bathroom if you need to, and write for 15 minutes. Sit in your closet, hide from the kids. You can do it. They can afford to be by themselves for 15 minutes. Okay. Unless they're like an infant or like crawling around, like make sure they're safe first. Okay. Don't worry about how well you write. The most important thing is to write down what makes sense to you and what comes naturally to you. Okay. Don't worry about it. In fact, when you're writing your first draft of your novel, if you're planning on writing a novel, that is when you are telling the story to yourself. Okay. Don't worry about grammar, spelling, any of that. It's the same thing with journaling. You are telling yourself, your brain is almost communicating with you through the writing, and don't worry about anything. Just get the words down on page. At the journaling stage, write as if no one else will read it. This will help you avoid putting on a show rather than writing authentically. You want to be authentic, especially if you are going to share this with the world. If you plan on sharing, if you plan on taking one of your journal entries and spinning a novel or a short story off of it, you need to be authentic. Okay. A reader can see through a piece where you're not being authentic. And so it is really important. Don't put on a show. Write the story, write the entry that you want to write. All right, some ideas for getting started. Write what is burning a hole in your heart. Like, I can't tell you how many times before I started journaling, I actually would post Facebook status updates about whatever was bothering me, and then I would delete them immediately. And it wasn't, I needed to get the words out of my head. I didn't need the whole world reading them. And so I would type it and be like, okay, the whole world doesn't need to know this, delete, But that's when I started doing that, I realized, oh, this really is something important. And I would always feel better after I wrote it, even after I deleted it. So another thing you can do is write a letter to yourself, give yourself a pep talk, talk to yourself about what's going on, write a letter to somebody else who is going through the same thing you are, or something that you've already healed from. Give them a pep talk. If you can give that person a pep talk, if you can tell that person how to get through their traumas, it's also not only transformative to them, but transformative to you as well. The other thing is, if you're really mad at someone really did something awful to you, write them a letter. You know what I mean? Write them a letter and tell them how you feel about what they did. Now, don't send it. But get the feelings out, get them out on page, and that can help you to again, contextualize and kind of put yourself in a place where you can see the other side as well. And I think that's really transformative and important. Use a photograph. What is going on in the photo? How do you feel about it? If you are in the photo, how were you feeling while the photo was taken, and what does it mean to you? Sometimes photos trigger things in us. Sometimes photos bring us back to a time that was so important to you. You know, maybe it's something that was ultra nurturing, or maybe right after that happened, something terrible happened. Write about all of that. If it's a bad situation, you could possibly heal something that happened when you were a child just through inspecting it through words. Again, though, if it's a serious trauma, I would go to a therapist. You know, I wouldn't write about it until you write a therapist. And again, I'm not a therapist or a doctor, so. Okay, so here's the thing you need to understand. Your words are important, okay? Your words are important not just to you, but also to the person who is reading them. Sorry, I'm keeping an eye on the time. So I would urge you, if you do start to do a journal, maybe look through them periodically and see if there's anything that you can build a story off of that would help somebody else. Because if you are going through something, somebody else is going through that same thing. And maybe that other person that's going through the same thing is feeling very alone. Like they feel like, I think we all know we are not the only ones going through the traumas of our life, but I think that there's still this loneliness that is deep inside when you're going through these things. And that's the one thing that happened with The Art of Drowning. It's a YA contemporary book. So a lot of my teen readers, I've had several teen readers come up to me and say, you know, I felt heard reading your book. And to me, the fact that those few teenagers told me that they felt heard when they read my book, that means my book was successful. I don't care how many I sell. I don't care the literary merit that I achieve by writing the novel. My goal for writing the novel was to make someone feel less alone. And I achieved that. So to me, it's successful, right? So not only can writing benefit you, but sharing what you were dealing with can actually help others to feel less alone. If a story or character matters to you, it will matter to someone else. And I think I was mentioning this before the call started, or before the Zoom started, that you have to make sure what you write is authentic to you and it matters to you. If it matters to you and it is of great importance to you, you will write it as if it is important, and others will then see that and they will see the authenticity and it will matter to them. Okay, so if you create characters or kind of massage people in your life to become characters and they matter to you and they become real, they will become real to someone else. So use your journal as a jumping off point for ideas for works to share. But how can you do that? There are so many mediums for you to share what is in your journal. You can formulate it into a personal essay, which is basically sitting back and saying, you know, what happened during this time frame. This is how it affected me. This is how it could affect you. This is how it could change your life. How could I have handled it better? How could they have handled it better? Personal essays are amazing. In fact, they don't have to be so serious, right? So if you look at David Sedaris, he wrote Me Talk Pretty. He is a memoirist. And so memoir, there's a kind of fuzzy line between personal essay and memoir. But David Sedaris writes these memoirs, and they're short, and they are funny. They are so funny. So it doesn't have to be serious. It can be funny. But what he does is he takes these very large topics, these very important topics, and spins them around and makes them sound funny so that after you're laughing through it, and then when you're finished, you sit back and think to yourself, that was really important. Wow, I picked up something from that. That was effective. So I think that he's a great, if you're into memoir or personal essay, look up David Sedaris. Another book to think about is The House on Mango Street. I'm actually teaching that right now to a group of middle schoolers, but it's basically a fictionalized memoir that is written so powerfully. Basically, the main protagonist is 12 years old, and her world is seen through, her eyes. She's telling you the story of what's happening through her eyes. At the same time, Amy Tan is a wonderful person to look at memoirs. She does this effectively too. Hers are a little more serious and not funny like David Sedaris's. So check hers out. Then there's, of course, poetry, which Io has written so many poetry books that you all should definitely check out. Poetry is a great way, I think, to really, in an artistic and stylized manner, get your point across, and how much poetry is really heavy and important, and it really is writing what is in your heart, and that's powerful. I often like spoken word poetry. I am a huge fan of spoken word poetry. Spoken word poetry kind of blurs the line between poetry and drama, or acting. And it's basically, if you would listen to spoken word poetry, you wouldn't think it was poetry, but it is. It is stylized words strung together to make a large point, and usually spoken word poetry, you can find it on YouTube. Spoken word poetry is really digging deep at what is paining you. And oftentimes they take a look at social issues, racial issues, inequality issues. And so those are extremely powerful. And I use spoken word poetry a lot in my classes with high schoolers because they tend to resonate with it well, because they're trying to put their world into basically place for themselves. They're trying to figure out the world. And so these spoken word poetry moments give them a chance to talk about what is bothering them, because, teens, they have these very big emotions, right? And so I really highly suggest spoken word poetry. And if you do spoken word poetry, get up and tell people your poetry. Get up and perform it. Also, you can fictionalize, like take that seed of your story, of what you wrote in your journal, and grow it up into a tree that is a fictionalized story. So you can do flash fiction. Flash fiction is generally from 6 words to 5,000 words. And then a short story is from about 5,000 words to about 40,000 words. So the flash fiction would really pay attention to one moment in time. Okay. One brief moment that has a large image, that has a large story to tell. Then we have short stories that can go a little bit deeper, and those are great. You can also submit short stories to magazines or to contests or to anthologies. When you see people saying, hey, I have an anthology that I'm starting here, would you like to take part? Submit. Definitely submit your short stories. Or you can write a novel. Novel is generally 40,000 words to, hundreds of thousands of words. So where you can dig in deeper and have multiple themes, multiple things play into it to get across multiple messages. So the first thing to think about, though, is who is your reader? If you want to take your journals and you want to make sure that people out in the world feel heard through whatever it is that you thought about while you wrote your journal, figure out who those people are. Okay, because writing for children is going to be very different from writing for adults. If this is something that happened, if you're contextualizing something that happened to you as a child, write for children. Why not write for children? You know what I mean? Why not give some other child who's going through maybe like foster care or something like that, give another child hope through writing this? Or maybe a child is sick, they're scared about having their first surgery. Write about that. Write about that moment for you, and it makes that child feel less alone. I think that's powerful. So think about, what gender? Is it something that would only affect women? Is it something that would only affect men? Think about that. Their age, their hobbies. What are they going through? If they're interested in your book, they're probably going through the same things you are, which makes your words so important. And then how can your words make others feel less alone? How many people are out there, even living in big cities, but they just feel alone because no one could possibly understand what they're going through? It is powerful stuff if you can write a book that helps someone feel less alone. I think it's a worthy cause. It's worthy of your time. Definitely do it. Okay, so writing prose. And so writing novels, short stories, things like that, prose. That's prose. How do you fictionalize something? that actually happens. So the real event of person is just the seed from which the story will blossom. So minimize it down, take it down to chunks, to themes. What themes do you see in that journal entry that you want to write a novel about? What do you want to get out there? Answer that question. Do you want to get out there that friendship is necessary, or relying on people? Did relying on people fail you? How do you learn to rely on people again? Being afraid about the state of the world, about the pandemic. That's the thing. Last summer, I was teaching in the Young Writers Workshop that I'm the director of. And every single student, that was when COVID obviously was at the worst. All of these teens, we were meeting online instead of on campus at the college. All of these students had a lot of anxiety about COVID. And so their stories were all about dealing with the anxiety of COVID, and they did it in different ways. Some people did it as in like flash fiction that is here now contemporary. Some people wrote fantasy novels, okay? Some people even one kid even wrote about football, but it was still centered around the idea of anxiety. And I didn't ask them to do that. They all did that on their own because they needed to deal with the anxiety that they felt over COVID-19. And it was powerful. And they came out of it and they were like, that really helped me, because they were able to get it down into words how they were feeling. And so remember, one wrote about a grocery store experience. One wrote about a football game. One wrote a story about elves that were going out into the world to find the cure for a disease. One wrote something that was historical about like the Black Death, the plagues of Europe. They all took a different way, an avenue of expressing that anxiety. Okay, so yeah, they're looking at the themes and then they spun a story. Mix the real with fiction. Okay, of course, you have to change the names. If you are mad at your neighbor, don't use your neighbor's name. Also, maybe change how they look, change exactly what they do. If they're like a really terrible person, change what they do that is terrible. Change them. Create another character that is similarly bad. Does that make sense? Don't get yourself sued. Don't get sued. Change names, fictionalize, okay? But do it along the same lines. All right, so the first thing that you need to look at is plot, okay? So you need to start your story or dialogue. You should start your story in the action. So when you're forming your plot or what you're going to do, think to yourself, you need to draw the reader in immediately and you need to keep them. You need to make your reader care. The best way to make your reader care is to start with dialogue, start with action, start with the stressful moment, okay? Your story should build in tension, okay, until the main explosion or the climax. I let everybody know in the chat that there's Freytag's model. Look up Freytag's model of plotting, and basically you will see it's like a roller coaster. So it's like rising action, climax, falling action. So we're going to be teaching a class on novel writing, and this is going to be a whole hour-long lesson about this model. So just letting you know that's coming up because it's hard to do in just a few minutes. So the main point is that you need to continually add pressure on your characters. You need to continually make things harder and harder for them until they explode, which is the climax of your story. Now, add in backstory in small nuggets. You want to add to the richness of your story. So you do want subplots and backstory, but don't add it in big heaping info dumps, okay? Add it in small bite-sized chunks because you never want to take your reader out of the story. So if you do big info dumps of information, you are kicking your reader out of the story and they no longer care and they will put your book away. So just make sure to stick with the plot, constantly add the pressure, and off you'll go. We'll talk more about that in the class that's coming up. So character development is one of my favorite things to talk about. And again, I could talk for hours about character development. So I'm going to do it quickly because we need to wrap up soon. Your main character pushes your plot forward. So your main character is the most important element of your story. Okay. So you need to create characters who are believable. So remember, no one is perfectly good and no one is perfectly evil. Make sure your characters are not perfectly good or perfectly evil either. Okay. A lot of times people write a perfectly good main character, and the reality is that's boring for readers because it's not realistic. Okay. Your main character must have flaws. So, how do you do that? Of course, you're going to have your journal and you're going to have all of your thoughts. But in addition to that, people watch. Go out into the world when it's safe from COVID. Go out into the world and watch people. Eavesdrop. I'm not saying steal their stories, but listen to how they talk about things. Listen to how they are saying what they are saying. And then develop each character by finding their personality type. So take one of these Myers-Briggs tests. I use 16personalities.com. If you take that test and you answer the questions, you will have a better idea of how your character behaves, how they interact with others, what annoys them. Whatever it is that annoys them, make that your antagonist. Make that the person who's adding pressure. So, how to form a story setting or world building. Fact of the matter is that even though you are building your story off of a journal entry, which is very much real and realistic, your story does not need to be realistic, because you're taking your story, your journal entry, down to its themes, down to that small seed from which the flower will grow. Okay. So look at those themes. If you want to write fantasy, you can write fantasy for any theme under the sun, even if it's something that you wrote from your journal. So you do not have to keep everything contemporary or realistic. So your setting sets the tone for your book. It is incredibly important. I often tell people that the setting is just as important as the characters. Okay. So don't overlook it. Your characters have to interact with your setting, and your setting interacts with your characters. Your setting can change the whole course of your story. It can provide foreshadowing, tone, and mood. Do not ignore the setting. It is, as I'm saying it again, it is as important as your characters. Okay. All right, so here, I am right on time. Okay, so Io and I are actually pairing up through inkyourlegacy.com, through GMGA Publishing, and we are going to be doing a novel planning course. Okay, so there's going to be 12 modules where we're actually in the process of recording videos right now for that. And so you're going to learn about building your author community, finding your reader, finding your inspiration, plot models, which is Freytag's model and the hero's journey, character development, setting and world building, subplots, backstory, exploring tense, point of view, how to keep a reader engaged, pacing, and creating hooks and beginning reading or writing. So in American dollars, and I'm not sure what it is in the Philippines. So it's $205. But if you register between July 3rd and the 10th, it's 50% off, which is pretty cool. Because honestly, I'm going to tell you the truth. I am doing a lot of what I learned in my MFA program for this class. So it's basically like you're getting my MFA program. You really are. So for $205. So from July 21st through the 30th, it's 10% off. And like I said, Ink Your Legacy, you can write that down. But Io, do you have anything to add?
Hi, Abigail. I'm just listening to you and taking a lot in. And so I'm really excited about this. And we're getting a lot of comments on our live streaming today. They said that it's really beautiful and comprehensive. And I think a lot of people can really relate to what you just presented to all of us. Like at one point in our lives, we jot down, our feelings, we chronicled about our pains and everything. And I think it's really about time for everyone to just rediscover that, the art of feeling through writing. And this one that you just presented is really an opportunity. You know what? I'm really happy that because I met Abigail online about 4 years ago already, Abigail, and we first met through an anthology, the first one that we did, Transcendence. And so, from the first time that I read Abigail, I knew that she was really a great writer. And all these years, suddenly she had this novel already, The Art of Drowning. And would you like to check it? Because if you check it on Amazon. You will see all the positive reviews about the book. It really is a very great novel. And with this one, you just heard it from Abigail, no? So she's sharing the MFA, the things she learned there to us. So the thing that she put in here, and you'll know more about it because we're going to put it on the website. You'll know more about the details of it. In fact, I think I read something here. So yes, Catherine asked if the topics posted here are also included in the Inter Legacy class. No, this is actually another course. The one that I do is the book writing course. That's for the basic, if you really want to write a book, how to self-publish and market. But this one is really on novel planning and writing course. So I think some of you here are just ready to go ahead. I think just like me, I have heaps of journals already here, Abigail, with me over the years because I started when I was 9 years old. So I think I'm going to look back and just read what I have written there for the last years, decades, actually. So we have people here who are listening to us who are just ready to fire, give it a go, and try their hands on novel writing. And so this one is really perfect for you if you are considering that. And learn from the expert, learn from someone who has done it. And I think, Abigail, would you like to talk about your next projects coming up?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I am actually running an anthology for a group of both established writers and new writers who are basically doing what I talked about in this journal writing webinar. They are taking those moments and they are spinning them into poetry, spinning them into personal essays, memoirs, and short stories. And we don't have a title yet. I think it's going to be called Reflections, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm hoping that will come out sometime in the fall. And that'll be coming out probably through Cable Creek Publishing. So I'm excited about that. I'm jumping in, getting ready to edit those pieces this week. So that'll be good. And then also, I just finished the first draft of my next novel that is yet unnamed because I am terrible at naming novels. But that is basically the same thing. That took one of my friends passed away from cystic fibrosis, when I was younger. And I took that moment and that pain and spun a story off of that. And so I like to write YA contemporary. And so that's what The Art of Drowning is. And that's what the next novel will be.
Great. These are great projects. And we're going to wait for those things. So we still have 10 minutes before we close our webinar. And so we would like to entertain questions at this point. So the first question, would you like to read this, Jessie, or would you like me to read it? Because you just typed it. Let me just read it for you, Abigail. So Abigail, how do you usually decide the plot? I mean, which standpoint do you usually consider? Meet the reader's expectations, or at least what is in the trend, or based on what you personally want to create? I think it's really a battle, for a lot of people writing.
It is hard. It is hard to figure out, it's your art. This is your art. This is your baby. The main thing is you have to care about it. So if you're writing for just your market, ask yourself if you care about your story. Because if you don't care about your story, your reader's not going to care either. And that's the important thing. Like for me, okay, everybody's reading fantasy right now. All the teens, that's what's in right now is fantasy. Especially I write for teens. I don't care. I'm not writing fantasy. I'm writing contemporary. That's what I do. That's what I care about. You will find your audience. Write what you care about and you will find your audience. Did that answer the question?
Is that okay, Jessie? And I think you said yes. Jessie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's the dilemma of many writers, right? I'm not a full-fledged writer yet, but it's the usual thing that I'm asking. But of
Okay.
course, we need to go to what we want to create, right? It's like in the marketing field, we need to create the demand for the reader.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
thanks, Abigail.
Yeah. Yes, you do have to create a demand, but it's all about finding who your reader is, and marketing to them while writing the story that's authentic to you. So, yeah.
Agree.
Thank you for the question. And I think, Abigail, when you start writing and just think about, I really want to sell a lot of this book, that's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're bombarded with that
Yes. Yes,
aspect of
of course.
our.
Yeah. Yeah.
It happens. It happens. But I think that is counterproductive actually for you as a writer.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's a good question that just popped up about, okay, balancing being attentive to the technical side of writing and being encouraging to your students for them and being able to, okay. I always teach that your first, and Io and I were just talking about this. I always teach that the first draft is always, I'm sorry, it's word vomit. It's crap. Sorry. It is. It's bad. Your first draft is always bad. And so don't worry so much about the mechanics of writing while you're writing your first draft. And that is what I tell my students. What I tell my students is exactly this. The art happens in the revision and the editing. So it's like when you write down your first draft, okay, and you plunk it down there, there's your first draft. It's like an unsculpted piece of granite. And you're the sculptor, and you take your chisel and you chisel away at it until it becomes art. Okay. And so that's what you need to think of. That chiseling is where you work on the mechanics, the technical side, the syntax, the grammar, the punctuation, the typos. Okay. That's where it becomes art. And I can always tell 100% when a student hands in a writing that is their first draft. I can tell because it hasn't been chipped away and made into art. When you are first working on your first draft, that is when you are telling yourself the story. When you edit and revise, that's when you're telling other people the story. So yes. Also, to be encouraging, I use the compliment sandwich method. So the first thing is I tell them what they did right. I tell them what I enjoyed, but I don't just say, hey, I like this character. I tell them why, so that they know how to use that again in the future, so that they can realize, okay, that worked. I'm going to do that again. Okay. Second, I give them constructive feedback. So actual constructive feedback, not just, I didn't like this. No, you need to dig in and say, okay, this didn't work for this reason. This is what you can do to fix it. This is what I suggest. That doesn't mean they're going to take your suggestion, because everybody's writing is their own, but you can suggest things to them and then leave them motivated. That's the third part. That's the bottom piece of bread. Leave them motivated. Nobody should walk out of a critique or a workshop or a grading of a paper feeling as if they cannot write. Okay. You want the person walking away feeling like they can write and they can do this. So you need to say something motivating, something that's going to push them forward and make them want to continue exploring writing. And I actually, when I am hired to edit works for people, I do it the same exact way, because I never want to deflate a writer. I never want to make a writer feel like they can't write. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to make their writing shine, so I don't want to kill their spirit. And I think I do that from all the way. The youngest kids I teach are in 5th grade all the way up through adults. It's the same thing.
Thank you, Abigail. Another question from Des. What would you suggest so that the world in a fantasy novel could connect to the world of the reader, no matter how different the world and the laws and even the language in the fantasy novel is compared to the world as the reader experiences it?
Okay. I think you do that through characters. I think that I don't care if your character is a human, an alien, or a lampshade, I think that all writers, whether they admit to it or not, put a little bit of themselves into each and every character. Okay. So if you think about humans walking around an art gallery, most humans will say that they enjoy most looking at paintings with people's faces. Okay. People like looking at people. So when you're writing, you need to gather that human spirit. Even if your character is not human, that human spirit, that humanity, so that they can connect with the characters. So it doesn't matter if your story is taking place on Mars, at the bottom of the ocean, or in some magical fairyland. they need to connect with the character, and that's what'll bring them into the story and be able to kind of experience the setting and the world, because they're seeing it through the character's eyes and it becomes more real. Am I answering the question at all? I think I am.
Yes, go ahead.
So I think that world building and setting are extremely important. Often I say that you should treat them as a character, because they are that important. But really, it's the characters that bring it home. It's the characters that bring it home. And you have to, when you're writing your characters, you have to make sure they are interacting with the setting and the setting is interacting with them. It needs to affect the story, you know? So you need to, another thing that I notice is people don't use setting. And so you have two characters talking surrounded by like a whiteness. It's called like white room syndrome. They're surrounded by like this just whiteness because there's no setting. There's nothing to make things vivid. So you have to make sure that, you know, the story plays out like a movie in someone's head. And you can do that by setting, by describing, by zooming in on specific points when you want to slow your pacing down, making it come alive. I'm gonna have a whole entire module about this in the
I feel
class
the
too.
passion. I love it. So that said, thank you. What would you suggest in order for the setting to have its own personality and character?
Oh, okay. Well, make your setting create change. You know what I mean? If you want to stop a character from doing something, throw in a hurricane, you know, throw in a weather phenomenon. Make something about the weather change their lives. Make something about the setting, make your characters veer off path, you know? Yeah, you have to keep it kind of fluid and moving and really just consider it almost like a character, because it will affect the story as much as a character will.
Thank you so much, Abigail. And of course, we still have a lot of questions coming in on our live streaming. Unfortunately, we cannot answer them all, but you can keep in touch with Abigail, and she's going to give you the details how she can be contacted. Of course, we have this novel planning course. It's happening in August. So, yeah, you are welcome to take a look at it. It will be up tomorrow. And so you can just see the details if this is something that's going to help you with your plan on planning, writing a novel. So, Abigail, please tell us your details, how they can contact you, if that's possible. And also, please give us your final message before we close this webinar.
Oh, okay. Well, you can find me on Facebook. I have an author page, Abigail Wild Author, or you can friend me on Facebook. If you friend me on Facebook at like Abigail Wild, if you friend me and I don't friend you back, send me a message saying that you heard my webinar. I don't really allow a lot of people that I don't know to friend me. So if you just say, hey, I was in the webinar, I will add you. Also, I do a lot on TikTok right now. I do a lot of kind of writer inspiration TikToks, and I do a lot of advice. So people ask me questions and I answer a lot of writerly advice. So you can find me there, @wild_. Let me type it in. This is my handle on TikTok. So yeah, just definitely find me and add me and let me know who you are so I know. And then the thing that I want to leave you all with is that your words are important. Your words are incredibly important, not just to you, but to other people. So you need to, don't be afraid to put them out there. Just start writing. Just do it. You can make art of it later. Your words are important. You are important. You should write.
I love it, Abigail. Would you turn off the presentation so they can just see you? There you have it. There you have Abigail. Thank you so much for being with us. You know, it has been a very wonderful presentation and been very helpful to us. I know our participants are saying a lot of good things, especially in our live streaming, and they really want to get more from what you have just said. But yeah, my challenge to all of you is, you know, just apply what Abigail said. Start writing your journal, 15 minutes a day in the same place at the same time. Make it a daily routine, and it's going to help you a lot. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we will be seeing you again on our next live interview with our authors. And if you haven't done so, can we just ask you to please share this video to your friends so that they'll know more about the power of writing, the art of reading through writing. So there you have it. Don't forget to ink your legacy and see you on the next live webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you, Abigail. Thanks to
Thank
our
you.
Zoom participants.